Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mailbag, the mailbag installment here at AMC Movie News, where all we do is take your mailbag questions. My name is John Campia. I am the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News. And, every day, Monday through Friday on AMC Movie Talk, we take a little time and take a couple of your mailbag questions that you guys send in to us. And on Saturdays and Sundays, all we do is take your mailbag questions. And by the way, people ask me all the time, the way you can send in questions to us is by emailing us at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. So that's how you send in questions. And send in your question. Maybe it'll get answered on AMC Movie Talk. Maybe it'll get answered on AMC Mailbag. Who knows? There's a plethora of opportunities. So listen, we're going to dive right into it here today on this Sunday and getting right into your mailbag questions. So let's get started with this. The first question today comes to us from Pablo. And Pablo writes, "Hey guys, I love the show. My question is, if movie rights from other studios reverse to Marvel Studios, can they still use the same actors that played a specific character? For example, let's say Spider-Man goes back to Marvel. Could they still use Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man?" That's an interesting question, Pablo. And for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, sometimes, other studios have the rights to make certain movies based on certain Marvel characters. Sony has the rights to make the movies of Spider-Man. Fox has the rights to make X-Men and Fantastic Four movies. For a time, other people had the rights to make Daredevil or Punisher and things like that. But depending on the contract and depending on the agreement, if a studio has the rights to a certain Marvel character, if they go a certain amount of time without being in production on a new movie, then those rights can lapse back to Marvel, such as the case of Daredevil. Daredevil now has the rights to Marvel now has the rights to Daredevil again, because the other studio didn't go into production. I believe it was Fox didn't go into production on a new Daredevil movie soon enough, so they lost the rights to the character. It goes back to Marvel. So the question Pablo is asking, if I'm understanding it right, is okay, if that happens, theoretically, could, say, Marvel now use Ben Affleck as Daredevil? Could, if for argument's sake, and it's not going to happen, but if for argument's sake Spider-Man went back to Marvel, could Andrew Garfield be Spider-Man again? It's an interesting question. And while I think every single property has its own specifics in its deal. However, I believe that the answer to that question, well, there's two answers to that question. The first answer, I believe, is yes. I believe the other studio is right to use whatever actor they want. If Marvel wanted to do another Daredevil movie, which they're not doing right now, but if they did, they would be perfectly within their rights to get any actor they wanted to portray the character. If they wanted it to be Ben Affleck, they could go and ask Ben Affleck. I don't think Ben would do it. He's a little busy with Batman right now. But they have every right to go and ask Ben Affleck if he wants to do it, and so on and so forth. And if Spider-Man went back to Marvel, they'd have every right to use Andrew Garfield if Andrew Garfield agreed to do it. But the second answer to your question is a pretty obvious: they wouldn't use the same actor, because why would they? Put yourself in Marvel's shoes for a second, or any studio, really. Let's say you get the rights to Star Wars, or, well, let's leave Star Wars out of it. Let's say you get the right to anything, okay? You get the right to Daredevil back, right? If you're Marvel Studios, you don't want to associate your new franchise, your new series of Daredevil films with the old version. You don't want to do that. You want to create your own version, free of the history and the baggage that may come along with it from the others, free of the backstory that comes along from the other studio, free of everything. You want to start your franchise, telling your story, your way, the way you want to do it, with a clean slate. So if I'm the head of Marvel and I get the rights to Daredevil back, I don't want Ben Affleck in it, because I don't want to associate, not because the old Daredevil is bad or great, simply because this is my franchise now, and I'm going to start it off the way I want to start it off. Not with the predefined history that came with the other version. We're telling my version of it now. So everybody knows I love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man right now, but if I'm Marvel and suddenly I got the rights to Spider-Man back, I'm not getting Andrew Garfield to play him. I'm not getting Tobey Maguire to play him. I'm not getting anybody who's played him before because I want him to have his own association. I don't want him to be tied to other versions of other films made by other studios. I'm starting from scratch with a clean slate. Completely. Because, I don't want there to be any confusion that, oh, wait a minute, so this is a continuation of the story of that. No. This is our new Daredevil. This is our new Spider-Man. So, can they? Yes. I believe they have the absolute right to do that. But would they? I believe the answer to that would be an absolute no. At least I know if it was me. If I was the one in charge, no way, no how would I want to do something like that. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And the next question to us today comes from Nicco Caruso, who writes, my question has to do with the casual audience understanding the Batman reboot. Since The Dark Knight Returns is still fresh in people's minds, do you think that the writers and directors of Batman vs. Superman will try to change Batman's backstory a little to help the casual audience understand this isn't a sequel to The Dark Knight Rises? The new Batman's cosmetics have changed drastically, but should this backstory also change to help settle the confusion? Well, thanks a lot for the question, Nicco. I gotta tell you, though, honestly, I don't think there's going to be any confusion. I honestly don't. I think, look, this is clearly Ben Affleck. This is a very different Batman. I mean, like, they didn't have to do any type of they didn't have to change the history of Batman so people would understand that Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins wasn't a continuation of the Michael Keaton, George Clooney, Val Kilmer Batman. They didn't have to change the backstory that, his parents were murdered in an alley. He grows up wanting to protect the city and take vengeance on those who would hurt others. And they didn't have to change that to make sure you understood this is a new story. And I think it is well known, well publicized, all that kind of stuff that the Christopher Nolan Batman is done. And if there are people out there who still don't get that, trust me, by the time they see the marketing and the trailers come out, it'll make it abundantly clear this is a different Batman. This is a different universe than that one. So when you're suggesting change the backstory a little, I don't think you touch Batman's backstory. That as a child, seeing his parents murdered in front of him, setting his path on life, and blah, 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 blah. Now, if you're talking about minor little changes, like he didn't fall down the mouth of a cave, or if you're talking about this was his childhood friend and not that person was his childhood friend, I mean, sure, you can make little minor changes, but honestly, I think it's finding a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. I'm honestly really not worried about the general population being completely confused. Wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. I thought Christian Bale was Batman. I thought he gave up being Batman at the end of the last film. I thought he ran off and was now living in France with Anne Hathaway. I don't think there are a lot of people out there who are going to have that kind of confusion going into the movie. And I think any potential for that confusion is going to be completely wiped away by the completely different Batman that we're getting with Ben Affleck as opposed to the Christian Bale one. So should they? I don't think they need to. Honestly, I think we're looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. So I think we're okay. I really do. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Melvin Banegas. Man, I'm not even going to try to say that again. Sorry, man. I'm totally bad with names. Anyway, hello, AMC Movie Talk. I love the show. Thank you so much, Melvin. Keep up the good work. My question is regarding who should replace Edgar Wright for the AntMan film. With all the directors that have been listed as possibilities to replace Edgar Wright, why hasn't co-writer Joe Cornish been considered to direct Ant-Man? He directed 2011's Attack the Block, which I loved. Does Joe Cornish not want to direct Ant-Man? Well, first of all, Melvin, I'm not really sure when you wrote that email. I'm going to assume that maybe you wrote it a little while ago. They have found a replacement for Edgar Wright, actually, and it's a director by the name of Peyton Reed. And Peyton has directed such films as Yes Man, Bring It On, The Breakup. He did some directing of the TV show New Girl. I gotta tell you, I'm not thrilled with the selection, but I'll get more into that on AMC Movie Talk tomorrow about my reaction to the Peyton Reed thing. But let's stick with your question. Why not Joe Cornish? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Joe Cornish, who co-wrote the script with Edgar Wright, there's two big problems with the notion of him doing it. The number one and obvious problem is that the very reason that Edgar Wright left Ant-Man was because they changed the script so much that it wasn't really the same movie anymore. And, understandably so, Edgar felt slighted by that, and he decided to depart the film. Well, since Joe Cornish co-wrote the script with Edgar Wright, you have to assume that Joe would be in the same boat as Edgar. And if I think it would look pretty desperate on Joe's part were he to take the job directing the film when Edgar Wright left. And they both worked on that script. And Edgar left because he felt, slighted that they changed the script so much. So Joe would have been in the same boat. But they didn't offer the directing gig to Joe. And I'm going to be honest with you. Here's the thing about Joe Cornish. I have not seen enough of his stuff to really have an opinion. And actually, I'm gonna bring up Joe's IMDb page here for a second. Joe, and we'll see how this goes. Because the only thing that I've seen, that I know of that I've seen that he's directed, was Attack the Block. Now, he's got a couple of other TV credits on here that I have not seen, but his only directing credit is Attack the Block. And I know there was talk for a while that he was being looked at to direct Star Trek 3. I know there's some serious discussion out there that Joe Cornish was next in line to direct Star Trek 3 after J.J. Abrams announced that he was leaving to do Star Wars. And of course, now we know Roberta Orci is directing Star Trek 3, so that's not a thing. I'm going to be really honest here. Attack the Block is one of those movies that I was a little late to the party on. Like, I didn't see it immediately. I didn't see the press screenings of it. And I heard all of my online brethren talking about, all the online film bloggers and everything, talking about how much they love Attack the Block. Like, they were losing their minds over it. They thought it was like the greatest thing. One of the best films that year. Everybody was just going gaga over this movie. So I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, sign me up. I'll go see it. So they signed me. I went to go see it, finally. And I got to tell you, I wasn't impressed. I actually didn't like Attack the Block. I honestly didn't. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I made that movie, if I made that exact movie the way Joe did it, I would think is the masterpiece of the universe. What he was able to do on a certain budget and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah. But as a film fan myself, I watched that film after hearing all the hype about it. I'm like, the movie's okay. I really did not see anything exceptional about it. There were a couple of really strong performances in it. Especially amongst the young cast. I thought they did really well. And in that, you could say Cornish did a good job working with them as a director works with an actor. But overall, I wasn't super impressed. And you got to know, if you haven't seen Attack the Block, don't be completely put off by giving it a chance just because I'm saying I didn't like it. Because you got to keep in mind, a lot of people really, really like that movie. So it just might be me. So if you haven't seen Attack the Block and you were thinking about checking it out, don't be deterred about checking it just because I'm saying I wasn't all that impressed with it. Because a lot of people do. I'm just telling you, my opinion is I wasn't that impressed by it. So I wouldn't have wanted Joe Cornish to direct it, to be honest with you and to be frank with you. I don't think he has a resume to justify doing an Ant-Man, something this big. But that's just my opinion. And, I was really curious to see what he was going to do with Star Trek 3 when, people were talking about that being a possibility. But that obviously didn't turn out and didn't work out. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens and how this all pans out. But for now, Joe Cornish wouldn't have done it because he'd be in the same boat as Edgar Wright. He wrote the script with Edgar, and Marvel changed the script on him, so that's why they walked. But I don't think Marvel would have ever offered him the job, nor would I wanted them to offer him the job at this point yet, because I just wasn't all that thrilled with Attack the Block. So just my opinion. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Brian Lyndon Johnston, who writes, "Hey there, there hasn't been much news coverage regarding the development of the 2015 Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie. I was wondering if you guys are looking forward to this movie or not. I notice it's classified as an action, adventure, comedy on some sites. This does worry me because I enjoyed the original series and it definitely wasn't a comedy. I'm just hoping it doesn't turn out like Starsky and Hutch. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Brian. And first of all, let me say, I think we can put your fears at ease and say this isn't going to be Starsky and Hutch. This isn't going to be a slap-knee, yuck comedy. Like what you would expect from Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson doing a film together. This isn't going to be a Zoolander. This isn't going to be one of those types of things. But I think they're going to put humor in it. And I think they're going to put some comedy in it, but I don't think it's going to be yuck, like spoof comedy like Starsky and Hutch was. I've been actually fascinated by this Man from U.N.C.L.E. story because if you remember, it was originally supposed to have Tom Cruise was going to be in it. And it wasn't until after they announced they were going to be doing a Mission Impossible 5 that Tom Cruise then dropped out. Because I think the franchises are just frighteningly similar. And obviously, Mission Impossible is Tom Cruise's franchise. He's also the producer on that, as well as being the star of it. So he wants to keep his focus on that. So now what you've got your two guys. If I'm remembering it correctly, it's Armie Hammer and it's Superman himself. Oh, damn it. What's the name of the guy who plays Superman? Hold on a second. I'm going to kill myself. Henry Cavill. Of course. Why was I forgetting Henry Cavill's name? Anyway, so you got Armie Hammer and you got Henry Cavill, who, ironically enough, that could have been your Batman versus Superman cast right there, because a lot of people forget, a bunch of years ago, Warner Brothers was looking at developing a Justice League movie with all young members of Justice League. And the guy they had cast as Batman was this totally unknown actor by the name of Armie Hammer. And a lot of people made fun of it because, come on, that's a made-up name. So you could have been looking at your Batman and Superman cast right there with Armie Hammer and Henry Cavill. So anyway, these two guys are in it. And first of all, Henry Cavill is a very, very gifted actor. If you watch his performance, he was like the second lead guy in Tudors for, I think it was 3 seasons that show was on. He was great in that. I thought he was the best part of Immortals. He was awesome as Superman. He nearly was James Bond a number of years ago. He's a terrifically talented actor. And I really like Armie Hammer a lot, notwithstanding The Lone Ranger. Let's try not to think about that. But I thought he was great in The Social Network. Where he played two twin brothers. He was amazing in that. And I'm really looking forward to see what he does in the future. I am very curious, and I like the whole premise of Man from U.N.C.L.E., but I think it's going to be a little bit more modern action film type in the sense that it's going to have comedy in it. But I don't think it's going to be that kind of comedy. I don't think it's going to be Starsky and Hutch or Will Ferrell kind of comedy. I think it's going to be something completely different. And I think it's going to be just fine. So you're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I cannot wait to see that movie. And I'm really looking forward to the first bit of marketing coming out for it. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from... Who does it come from? It comes from Albert Vink. And Albert Vink writes, recently you mentioned that the possibility exists that we will see Oliver Queen make an appearance in Batman vs. Superman as a contributing billionaire, but not as Green Arrow and not the CW version. And by the CW version, he means the TV show Arrow. With the Flash spin-off series on its way, what will the approach be for the inclusion of the Flash in the Justice League movie? Will they continue with the CW's approach or reintroduce the Flash? Thanks a lot for the question, Albert. And first of all, let's correct an assumption you're making. You're making an assumption that they're going to put Flash in a Justice League movie, and that's a dangerous assumption to make. I wouldn't assume that. If I were in charge of Warner Brothers, I would have Flash. I would have the core 5. I would have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Flash. That would be my core 5. Then if we had to include others, and I think it's dangerous to include too many, but if I had to include others, I would look at Aquaman, I would look at Cyborg, Martian Manhunter would come in there at some point, but he would never be referred to as Martian Manhunter. He'd just be known as John Jones. Anyway, I think it's dangerous. Don't assume that the Flash is going to be there. But okay, let's go on that for a second. Let's then, for a moment, make the assumption that Flash is going to be there. Do we think they would use the Flash from the new CW show that's coming, which is a spinoff of the Arrow show? Or would they just bring in an entirely new actor, new character, the Flash, and not the one from the TV series? I think the answer to that is, if they do use a Flash in the movies, that it would be a new Flash. Warner Brothers is not going to cross the streams. They're not going to have their television universe and their movie universe cross paths. It's a terrible idea to do that. Like Stephen Amell, who plays Oliver Queen, Arrow, in the Arrow TV show, he's awesome at it. He's great. But I don't want to see him in the Justice League movie. Why? Because he's not good enough? No, he's absolutely good enough. And he would be a great Green Arrow in the movies. But it's a bad idea to cross, because if you cross the streams, then you completely handcuff the creativity of the TV show. Now the TV show has to follow rules set by the movie universe. They can't do anything in the TV show now that would be in contradiction to what they're doing in their movie universe, and vice versa. Now the movies are handcuffed by what the TV show does, because you can't make movies that contradict what the TV shows are doing. If you're saying they're in the same universe, it's a bad idea. The Arrow TV show is one of my favorite shows on TV, and I want it left alone. I don't want now the showrunners of Arrow to have to go, are we allowed to do this? Because we don't know what Zack Snyder's thinking about doing in the next movie, and if what we want to do on the TV show might contradict what they're trying to do in them. Just ignore it. Just forget it. The TV shows, the TV shows. The movies are the movies. Leave them alone. We've seen them try to experiment with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we've seen what a bag of crap that show turned out to be. It's just, leave it alone. Just absolutely leave it alone. So no, I think the people at Warner Brothers are smart enough to see that it's a bad idea. So if they go ahead and use a Flash in their movies, and if they go ahead and want to use an Oliver Queen or a Green Arrow character in the movies, they will be new characters. They won't be the same ones from the TV show, because I'm going to believe that they're going to keep those universes separate. And it's the right thing to do. It's just a bad idea all the way around to want to cross those. And I say that as a fan of the shows and as a guy who wants to be a fan of the movies. I think they have better chances to be great as long as their hands are completely untied and they can do whatever they want and not have to worry about staying consistent with the show and staying consistent with the movies. Let them be their own thing. And I think as a fan, I'm going to get a lot more enjoyment out of it that way. That's just my opinion. Anyway, okay, let's move on to the next question today. And the next question comes to us from Dejan Borjanovic, and he writes, as an avid fan of the show and one who, oh dear, and one who worships at the altar of the great and divine God Campia, I was wondering, how can fans of the show get one of those badass, kick-ass Sons of AMC shirts? Where can I go if I want to purchase them? I want to wear my love of AMC movie talk loud and proud through the streets of Chicago. Well, thank you so much, Dejan. I really appreciate that. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, and you probably do, but for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, one of our AMC viewers over in Europe, he's a graphic artist, and he's ridiculously good. I've looked over some of his work, and he knows I'm a big fan of the TV show Sons of Anarchy. And I once said something, I once mentioned that because it rhymes, this, Sons of AMC, right? So he put together this incredible logo of the Sons of AMC, and you see that's my hoodie and my hat and my mic stand, my mic arm that I've got in front of me, but with instead of a Reaper, he's got the bowl of popcorn in his hand. Sons of AMC online original. It's a great logo. And so what we did for fun was we went and I got a bunch of shirts made with Sons of AMC. I'm getting some denim vests and some leather vests with a big Sons of AMC logo on the back. I'll probably wear that at Comic-Con. Me and Schnepp and Christian and Dennis you'll probably see us toting around with those Sons of AMC vests on or whatever. And where can you buy them? You can't. We're not selling them. We're never going to sell these shirts. Never going to sell them. But we will give some out, and we have given some out with some different giveaways we've done on AMC Movie Talk. We might even give a bunch out at Comic-Con this year. So once again, plug. If you're going to be at Comic-Con this year, make sure you come to either our panel or our meet and greet, or come to the booth at Comic-Con on Thursday when we're going to be doing some stuff. And we're going to be giving out some stuff, and I'm sure some of the things we're going to be giving out are shirts, or maybe even just the patch with that logo on it. The patch you can just then take and stick on your shirt or whatever like that. That can be fun, but they are not for sale. You can't buy them. What I might do, though, is I might email the artist and say, hey, yo, would you mind if we took this design you did and we made it available in a high-res version, if we made it available for people to download? That way, if you wanted to download the high-res version of the image and do something with it, then you can. I'll ask him that and see if he's up for it. But as far as where can you buy them? You can't buy them anywhere. We're not going to sell them. Number one, I didn't design it. It's not our design. It's somebody else gave them as a gift to us, and we'd like to use it. But we're not going to sell them. Now, the other thing is we will give some stuff away, though. So keep your eyes open when we give crap like that away. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Oh my gosh, this is the last question of the day, too. We've kind of flown through these questions today. The last question today comes to us from J. Nolan Wallace, who writes, my question is, why do Marvel films have 3 to 4 movies a year when DC Films has a movie once a year? Keep on the filthy. Thank you very much. Well, Schnepp talks about this a lot, actually, on the show. About the fact that we get to have 3 to 4 Marvel-based character movies every year, whereas DC, we get maybe one every 2 or 3 years. And maybe now we'll get into the once-a-year thing, but we're not getting another DC movie to 2016. So the reason that is, and most people know this, but in case you don't, it's because Marvel Studios, they only put out 2 movies a year. Marvel Studios do all the Avengers umbrella stuff. So your Iron Mans, your Captain Americas, your Thors, your Hulks, your Guardians of the Galaxy, your Ant-Man, your upcoming Ant-Mans, Doctor Strange, all that kind of stuff. So they control all that. So their studio, Marvel Studios, they only put out 2 movies a year. What you have, though, is studios. Remember, we mentioned this earlier in the show. Fox Studios actually has the rights to make X-Men movies and Fantastic Four movies. So while X-Men and Fantastic Four are Marvel comic book characters, in the world of movies, they are not Marvel. They are Fox. They belong to Fox, and Fox puts out their movies. And then while Sony owns Spider-Man, even though Spider-Man is a Marvel comic book character, in the movie world, he's Sony. So Sony Studios makes the Spider-Man movies. And so while you're going to get a movie with 4 Marvel comic book characters having movies this year, but that's because it's being done by a whole bunch of different studios. You've got Marvel Studios proper making Iron Man 3 and Avengers or whatever else. You got Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America 2 coming out this year in 2014. So you have that. But then Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was actually put up by Sony, not by Marvel Studios. X-Men Days of Future Past was put up by Fox, not by Marvel Studios. But with DC characters, all of those characters are under one roof. They're all under Warner Brothers. And that's why somebody like me and Schnepp and a bunch of others advocate the idea of Warner Brothers actually selling off some of their characters so that other studios can make them. You know, and that's why I'm totally against the idea of Spider-Man going back to Marvel Studios and X-Men or Fantastic Four going back to Marvel Studios, because then we're not, like, look at the year we've had in comic book films this year. Okay, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't hit it out of the park, granted. But we had Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. It's just so good. And then we had X-Men Days of Future Past come out, my favorite movie of the year so far. It's incredible. And we wouldn't have had it if they were all under Marvel's umbrella. We'd be getting 2 movies a year. And it's just not the way to go. So I actually advocate the idea of Warner Brothers selling off a couple of their characters so that other studios can make them too. Warner Brothers won't do that, and I don't really blame them either for not doing that. But I think it would be a good thing if they did. As a comic book movie fan, I think it would be good because we'd get more movies that way. That's just my thought. Anyway, folks, that will do it for me. That's all the questions for today that we have for AMC Mailbag. Listen, don't forget, lots of great films playing in AMC theaters everywhere right now. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com. Get all your theater, showtime, and of course your movie ticket information. If you haven't done so already, take a second and click on the subscribe button, become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News channel, and also click the thumbs up button It's just a good way of letting us know that you actually like that we do these videos. And if you want an audio-only version of this episode or any episode that we do on AMC Movie News, look in the description of this video and you'll find a link to our iTunes. You can use that as your RSS feed so you can subscribe to our audio-only podcast using any of your favorite podcast servers. So that will do it for me, guys. Thanks so much. We'll be back again tomorrow, of course, for AMC Movie Talk on Monday on our regular scheduled time. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. My name's John Campea from AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.